Hello again, my dudes. This is Karima back with another Lords of the Fallen build video. This time taking something with a different touch. Instead of focusing on one-shotting everybody, which is pretty much what I've been doing with all my build videos, it's trying to find the most effective and immediate way to kill people, especially for PvP purposes. This time we are trying to do things a little different. And we are exploring the basics of status effects and how to make the best out of these things. Now, this is a poison-focused build with a sprinkle of fire and ignite and bleed. So you'll be trying to get as much status going on as possible. As you can see by my stats just on the left corner, I am level 110 as usual. Strength has not been changed, it's the baseline of the character I created. Agility is at 40, endurance is at 20, vitality is 31, radiance is at 20, and inferno is at 40. Let's start with the radiance, the reason being I require 20 radiance to be able to use the Lost Beresca's catalyst, which is the catalyst we'll be using for this build, because we are using Umbral spells as a support for the build and a way to get our weapon poison as well. And the reason why we want to get our weapon poison is because our weapons, which we are using, the dual wielding Bloodlusts at +10, the weapons itself, as you can see on your screen, they come with 60 bleed, 60 burn, and if you get the poison weapon, you get what's going on. You will also get poison on the weapon, so that's 3 status effects going on simultaneously. Also, we are focusing on using the Bloodbane ring and the Ring of Infernal Devotion. These rings basically work quite well together if you have the build for it, which is the case with this build. Now, what do these rings do? The Bloodbane ring basically it means that inflicting poison build-up simultaneous inflicts bleed build-up. Now, the weapon itself already comes with bleed, which is fine, but when you buff the weapon with the poison, it will increase the rate of which the bleed will build, because it will build not only from the 60 that the weapon already has, but also from the fact that you are applying poison. So it will be applying poison while doubly applying bleed, if you get my meaning. Also, another thing that helps with this effect is the fact that we are using this beautiful spell, which is the Putrefaction, which basically casts a fog of poison in the area. Good thing about this spell is the area is quite acceptable. It's not a massive fog of poison, and it's also not a tiny fog of poison. It's just the right size. The only problem is when you cast it, it doesn't really cast it on your opponent. It casts up to a certain distance in front of you, which will be in the direction of the opponent if you are locked in. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you are too far away, the poison fog will not be cast at that distance. It will be cast pretty much midpoint between you and the enemy that you are locked onto. So for PvE purposes, the best thing to do, as I'm going to demonstrate, is actually cast it onto the enemy, but then you have to be aggressive and try to keep the enemy in the area of effect to get the most out of it, because that way you'll be getting the enemy poison not just from the fog but also from the weapons, which will be buffed with the poison weapon. As for the other support spells, I'm using the Latimer's Javelin, I'm using the Barrage of Echoes, and I'm using the Misery Missile. The Misery Missile basically casts an Umbral spell that will slowly apply Wither to your enemies. So their HP is not going to go down, but they will start have Wither applied to their HP bars. So basically the idea here is you cast the poison, you cast the Misery Missile, and then you attack with the weapons for the most effective results. Now, to make the best out of all of this, we are using the Pendant of Burden, which means that you will deal additional damage for every status effect inflicted upon an enemy. Now, because we are using all the 3 permanent status effects, so that being Bleed, Burn, and Poison, this will give you a rough buff of around 30%, because you will be getting 10% increase per status effect. So if the enemy has all 3 status effects, it will significantly increase your weapon damage. Now, the other ring we are using is the Ring of Infernal Devotion. This ring basically says that inflicting burn buildup simultaneously inflicts ignite buildup. Now, because our weapons already come with burn on the weapons, you will see the ignite trigger quite occasionally. Not as fast as the bleed or the poison, but just at an acceptable rate. Now, a few things to keep in mind with this build. It's the way you use it. You have to keep in mind that for PvE purposes, the best thing to do is cast the poison weapon, cast the putrefaction, and then cast the misery missile, and try to keep the enemy in the area of effect where the poison is. I will demonstrate how to do this with the enemy down below, which is my favorite test subject, that one right there, as usual. For PvP purposes, this build is fun. Let's make that very clear. It's fun to use. It allows for some fun trolling, if you want to kind of call it that. I like to troll sometimes during invasions. And just try to kill my enemies in a different fashion instead of just one-shotting them. Basically, what I'm trying to do here is kill them with the poison. I'm trying to allow the poison to kill them. So you will see that when I'm playing PvP, I'm not being as aggressive because I don't want to simply kill them with the weapons. I could do that, but the weapons, unfortunately, once you get all the buffs applied, they do quite a significant amount of damage. This is why, if you take a look at the runes I'm using at the weapons, you will see that I have increased elemental damage, increased rate of poison buildup, and temporarily reducing a struct's enemy physical defense. All these things combined will help not just the poison buildup, but also to reduce the defense of our enemies, and increasing the elemental damage you get from the poison, the burn, and the bleed. All those things will help trigger bigger bursts of damage, so to speak. As for the armor, I use every single time on every single build the same thing: the Neophyte Hood, the Sovereign Protector armor, the Holy Bulwark gauntlets, and the Crimson Rector leggings. The reason why I do this and use these pieces of armor, as you can see in my character, is that these allow me to have 807 physical defense, 474 fire, but most importantly 534 holy defense. And this is kind of what keeps me alive during PvP, because as we know, everybody is using Pietas, Steel, or some form of holy damage. Holy damage tends to be the #1 source of damage for 90% of the invasions I do, which is fine. I've got nothing against it, but it's just the reality of things. As for the lamp, it's entirely up to you. I use what I find to be suitable. I like to have the glow on my head that you get from the Umbral Eye. As you can see, the Cursed in Form, your presence in Umbral is both noticed and feared. The secondary sockets, I've got 25% healing efficiency while in Umbral, just because. Now, suggestions and changes you can make. If you want to make the build stronger, you can change the increased elemental damage on both swords to the one that allows increases the physical damage you do when two wielding weapons, and you can have one on each. That gives you about a 10% increase per rune, so you'll be doing about 20% more damage, which is entirely up to you. I would suggest doing that if you are focused on PvE and you just want to be efficient as possible, because I am currently doing only PvP, as you know. I don't want to kill my enemies that fast. I want to keep them alive just long enough for the poison to do its job, or for the bleed proc to kill them, or the ignite proc to kill them. I want to kill them with an element instead of just swinging my swords or just casting spells. Unfortunately, I do have to cast spells here and there to keep my enemies on my toes, or if I'm fighting a 2 versus me situation, I do have to use the spells. And one thing to mention is the Barrage of Echoes. As you probably know, this lovely spell casts 5 eyes and it does a ton of damage. Now, let me go down below and kill my test subject for you guys to see what kind of damage to expect and how to use the build. So first thing you want to do is cast the poison weapon. Then you face the enemy, you cast the fog, you cast the misery missile, and then you try to keep the enemy around this area where the poison is. You see? This is where we want to keep them. And as you can see, I got all effects cast. And once everything procs, the damage, as you saw, just goes through the roof. So basically the idea, especially for PvE, especially against the boss, is if you do everything right, you will see that the damage starts at a certain rate, and as you apply more effects and the status and things proc, such as the bleeding proc and the ignite procs after the burn procs, once you get all those things combined, it's just going to end poorly for the enemies. This is mostly effective in bosses. Unfortunately, I don't really have bosses, as you know, but I did manage to do co-op with a random person, and I will put it right next to this example. I'm going to do it one more time so you guys see how this is done. You cast the poison, you keep the enemy here, so you get the best out of everything. As you saw, everything just procced. He has the bleed, he has the poison, and then if I hit him once, yeah, this is basically it. Job done. So this is basically the idea of the build. But now let's talk about build strength. The build is strong, the build is fun, but don't mistake this build for any of my previous builds. My previous builds had the sole purpose of one-shotting people and being as effective at dishing out extreme amounts of damage per hit. It's not the case here. This is just to take things differently and to have a new way to play the game. I hope you will enjoy it. I hope you try it out. It's very fun to use. I do recommend it if you just want to try something different. And to give it a go and let me know in the comments down below what you think. If you have any suggestions, I always appreciate these. Feel free to write them down in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoy the build, subscribe, share the video with your friends, and spread the word, because this build is quite fun to use. Thank you guys for watching it so far, but now as usual, let me demonstrate how this thing works in PvP, and also I will give you an example of PvE fighting a boss, which I haven't done in some other builds. Thank you guys for watching so far. So let's start with the PvE example and the boss fight. I actually started casting just a few Umbral spells so you can see what kind of damage we were doing with the Umbral spells, about 520. But now this is where the build shines. I actually was struggling with lag a little bit. So you see my companion is doing around 206 damage per hit. And we are doing about 800 damage per swing, which, as you can tell, it's a massive difference. Now, here comes the part that you can see everything proccing at the same time. So, there he is. I land a few hits, managed to dodge this one, but then take a look. The bleed procs. He's taking bleed. Poison, he's bleeding, he's burning, he's everything at the same time, and now we are doing a lot more damage per hit, and then the proc of the ignite finishes him off. Now, here we go, apply the poison again on the weapons, and you will see how much damage we're doing. Unfortunately, lag during co-op and PvP, I mean, it's quite bad at the moment. But here we go, you can see the proccing of everything. The bleed has proc, the poison is procced. He's taking extreme amounts of damage per second, which every single tick doesn't really do a lot of damage, unfortunately. I still believe the poison could do some buffing, because it's not doing a lot of damage per second. I think it should be a little better than what it is at the moment. It's doing about 16 damage per second during PvP, which is not that great. It's doing sometimes 16, 18, but that's it. But you guys saw how the build is effective for PvE and boss fights. Now for PvP examples, so as I said, you cast the Misery Missile, you cast the poison. If the guy decides to stay in the poison, that will build up not only the poison but also the bleed. So keep that in mind, because you are about to see both things triggering during this fight. Unfortunately, as I said, lag is awful, especially since the last patch. I feel a massive difference during PvP fights lately, because the lag and the connections at the moment are just horrible, and I mean terrible, proper terrible. Now, as you can see, he's got the Misery Missile effect on, as you can see by that those butterflies flying around his head. I don't think he's realizing, but there you go, he just got poison. As I said, it's doing 16 damage per second, which unfortunately it's not a lot, because if you think about it, after 10 seconds, 10 whole seconds, you have only done 160 damage, which is not a lot. I think these numbers should be boosted up to something between 25 to 30 per damage. I think that's where the number would be best, because if you think about it, you have to put a lot of effort, especially in PvP, to actually build up the poison. It doesn't trigger that easily, and it takes time, and it can be cured. Come on, you just need to go on your inventory and use a poison cure and the problem is solved. So I think people using poison should be rewarded with getting a bit more damage out of poisoning an enemy, especially for PvP. But as you see, at this point I'm just waiting for the poison to do its job, and there he is, job done. He died to the poison. GG, my friend. Unfortunately, as you could also see, lag was terrible. Now for this guy, he's using fire, and you are about to see how quickly the bleed can trigger. So 1, 2, and he's dead. So I hit him twice. Unfortunately, of course, it didn't trigger anything with just 2 hits. But you are about to see it doesn't take much more than that. He swings a couple of times, and then I swing, and he dies to the proccing of the bleed. I don't know if you guys noticed. He didn't die to the swing. It was the second swing. It triggered the bleed, and he died. Now for this guy, he's actually quite friendly. I realized he was in this area waiting to be invaded. So he's probably just a guy looking for some decent PvP. So I decided to go for an honorable duel. We actually ended up fighting 3 times. I lost 1 because during that fight the lag was just out of this world. It was something else. I was being hit by extreme distances. As you can see here, the lag is not so bad at the moment. There is a bit of lag, you can tell, but not massive. But there you go, he's poisoned, and he actually died to the poison tick just before he could use his potion. So that was actually quite cool. We go into Umbral, he gets his second chance, I get a couple more hits, but as you can see, a single swing takes about half of his HP. So that's not too bad either, considering that the build is focused on proccing the poison and the bleed and the burn and the ignite more than anything else. Considering that I take half of his HP with just one swing is actually quite good. Now, he's actually playing quite aggressively. I'm trying to trigger the poison again. I don't want to kill him straight away. As I explained, I want to use this build to actually poison my enemies in PvP. I give him some time to kill that enemy. I mean, he was being honorable. I don't want to fight him if there's an enemy around, so I gave him enough space to get rid of that mob. He stays on the aggressive. I managed to parry that attack. There's another enemy there, and I was trying to kind of signal it to him, so I just got close to the enemy so he could hit him. There was another enemy there, and then he died to the poison before the enemy had any chance to interfere. So this was round 1. Round 2 is the round that I lost because the lag was absurd, and that round lasted about 15 minutes. I'm not even joking. Now this is round 3, when he actually decided to come with a grand sword, which is fine, but when you have a grand sword and you are fighting people dual wielding swords or dual wielding daggers, it's quite a disadvantage because the swing of the sword is so slow that it's quite easy to dodge and just counter. But again, the idea of the build here is try to poison him, so I just landed a few spells just to keep him on his toes, trying to trigger that poison, getting the poison cloud, and the poison cloud actually trigger the poison just at the right time. I'm avoid using the misery missile because I don't want his health to go down so fast that the poison will basically not even make a difference. As you saw, I just proc the bleed as well, trying to get a hit here and there, casting a few spells. He comes for the full swing, and then boom, the burn procs and the ignite procs, and the poison is there still. So another thing I've noticed is he's burning and he's poisoned, but you don't get the damage effect of both things during PvP. That's also another thing. But then, as you guys just saw, I got the bleed to proc, and he went down with the proccing of the bleed. It wasn't a swing that actually killed him. Now, I stay on the aggressive, trying to dodge the hits as much as possible, proccing those poison, casting those poison clouds, trying to proc the poison again. At this point, I noticed he was most likely on his inventory trying to change weapon. So I cast the misery missile just to get things done a bit faster by eating his HP bar with Wither. Still trying to get the poison. Unfortunately, as you saw, this round was a bit more laggy than the first round, but still not as bad as the second. The second was something out of this world. But as you can see, his HP bar, it's pretty much just Wither damage. So I cast another misery missile, trying to get it to do even more, eating his HP, so which it actually reached a stage where all of his HP bar was withered, as you see on the screen. I'm still trying to get the poison, and unfortunately it wasn't going that well. It was taking far too long to proc the poison, but I still tried to stay on it. But as you saw, he had changed his weapon, and now he was able to recover the lost HP by hitting the enemies around. I was trying to stay away and just have him poisoned, and then there you go. Finally he got poisoned. As you see, his HP bar is going down. But one thing I question here is how come, because all of his HP was withered, how come the moment the poison proc, it didn't just instantly die? So you understand what I mean, is that Wither works that if you take damage, all your HP that is withered goes down instantly. I don't know why that was not working during PvP. Maybe it's a thing with the poison. I don't know. If you guys know the answer, I'll be more than happy to learn it. Now, as for these two guys, as you see, they were quite aggressive the moment I showed up. I got rid of the co-op guy straight away. Now, I decided to toy and play with this guy a little bit. Still, I didn't go for the kill straight away. I wanted to get him poisoned. By the time I noticed it was actually running up the stairs and I cast the wrong spell, I wanted to cast the poison on top of the stairs. I decided to try to fool him and go back the other way, hoping to get him poisoned. So I found him here. Unfortunately, I missed the misery missile, but then lag is what it is. As you can see, I'm being hit by quite the distance. I'm not at weapon distance, and he was just crazy swinging R1, so I decided to do the same after I killed him. R1, R1, R1. Bye. So this guy attacks me straight away as soon as I invade, which is fine. It's a legit thing to do. I've got nothing against people that do that. I'm not asking for honor here. I'm just saying that if you do that, that's fine, but then I will be showing you no mercy. And in this case, that was the plan. I managed to hit him with a splash of the javelin. Unfortunately, his weapons were doing quite a significant amount of fire damage. So I tried to keep him away, and I thought, I'm going to go to my inventory, and I'm going to boost my fire defense. So that's what I've done, as you are about to see. I was trying to see what his plan was, and then I realized he was trying to cast the fire spells from afar, because fortunately for him, he can do that. None of the spells I'm using can be cast from such a distance. As I explain in the build details part of the video, the poison, even if I was able to lock onto him from here, which I'm not, but even if I was, the poison would not be cast next to him. It would be cast next to me, which kind of makes no sense if you think about it. I think these are some of the things the game could improve upon. It could have us cast the poison at the actual location of the locked target, no matter the distance. Unfortunately for Poison Fog, the putrefaction spell does rely on a distance. As you see where he is right now on the screen, if I cast the poison, it won't get near him. If I cast it from this distance, it will not be cast next to him. It will be cast pretty much midway, which is a bit strange. I wish it had a better range. Since I'm locked onto the target, it should just cast at the target's location. Anyway, the other thing I would suggest to the devs, if they would ever were going to watch this video, which I know they won't, but if I could suggest some improvements on poison, again, as I said previously, get those damage per second ticks to be a bit better. I'm not asking for 50 damage per second. That would be insane, because then in 10 seconds it would do 500 damage, which is quite a lot. But if it was to be somewhere between 25, maybe 30, depending on resistances or defense, poison resistances, somewhere between 25, 30, maybe if the enemy has very low poison resistance, go as high as 35, just to make it more worth using. And the other thing is, why is it that once the target is burned and poisoned, only one of the ticks per second actually takes place? Which I don't really get it, especially in PvP. It should have both status effects ticking at the same time, or not at the same time, but both present instead of one just taking over the other, which normally happens to be the poison takes over and the burn is there, but it's not really doing any damage per second, which makes no sense. Anyway, these are just a few suggestions. I think it would massively improve the build and the quality of poison builds. not just mine but others as well. Anyway, this will be the last PvP example. I hope you guys have enjoyed the build so far. This guy is about to have a surprise. As you see, I allowed him to die to the poison, but then I thought, I think he's gonna come straight for the kill, so I'm gonna go with the Umbral Eyes, and I was right. He comes and he dies. Thank you guys for watching it. Leave your comments down below. Like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate you all. I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio!